I tell our teams, like, feel really bad for one day, have a pity party, punch the wall, whatever you do, pray. And then the next day we go back to work, so.
You went from punch the wall to pray there, which
I know. Yeah, maybe both, different things work for different people.
Welcome to the Digital Ministry Podcast. I'm Nick Runyon, your host. Digital Ministry Podcast is brought to you by Media Impact International, where we talk with people that are leading in the world of digital ministry, using tools like social media and video to reach people with the gospel. And I'm joined today by my friend Marc Pierce, who I'm excited to introduce everybody to and have this conversation with. Marc, thanks for being here.
Yeah, buddy. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too. You do a number of things, and you do them all well from what I can tell. But
you just don't know about the bad ones.
That's right. Publish the wins.
That's right.
Something that I want to zero in on with you today, and I think you've graciously agreed to do this, but you've been involved in some notable stuff through your company, Warm Springs Productions. Is that right? Warm Springs Productions. Yeah.
Yep, that's it.
Just things that people might have seen. The Yellowstone 150, the 150 anniversary special with Kevin Costner. Duck Family Treasure. Mountain Men is one that a lot of my friends are familiar with. I watch that one all the time. How America Works with Mike Rowe. I mean, these are big productions that your team has been able to put together and put out there for people. Do you want to talk a little bit about what kind of television that is? I mean, it falls into a certain category that you call unscripted television, but just for those that aren't aware or maybe don't know, maybe tell us a little bit about that work.
Sure. Yeah, happy to do that. And most people don't know the sort of architecture of entertainment, nor should they really. It's not anything anybody needs to know. But high level, there's a big fork in the road, or big division between the activities in entertainment and entertainment video production. One is scripted, and of course, that's the headline stuff. That's feature films, episodic television, dramatic television, all those kinds of things that are they're really, again, most of the headline projects in entertainment. The other fork is unscripted, what we call unscripted. And that then has several subcategories of documentaries, reality shows, history, real estate. Everybody is aware of HGTV, a whole cable network, and now streaming around real estate. And similarly, the Food Network, is all food all the time. All those are what we call unscripted. Competition, all the competition shows fall under unscripted, singing competitions, all that kind of thing. So, the sort of overarching idea is those things don't have a script, which sometimes they do have a bit of a guiding script. But yeah, that's the bucket we fall in. We started on the very fringe of it, making outdoorsy shows, hunting, fishing, skiing, rock climbing, because that's kind of where we live and who we are as people. But there aren't huge audiences for those things, even though, the core groups that participate in them are really passionate. We figured out some years ago that if we wanted to build our company, we needed to aspire to more mainstream stuff that, millions instead of thousands of people might watch. And that's where some of the shows you rattled off, early on, we did shows for like the Travel Channel. And then we did Mountain Men, which, knock on wood, is still running 14 years later on History Channel.
It's amazing.
And on. Yeah, I think we've created and produced like 50 some different titles now, most of which you never heard of, because the way it works is you premiere a show And then the percentage that get picked up for a season 2 is pretty low. It's like a 1 in 10 hit rate. But those ones, the Mountain Men's of the world and some of the others that we've been fortunate to be a part of, keep going and create a foundation for the company.
I didn't plan on asking you this, but it's kind of interesting. Well, how does your team handle like a 10% success rate? There's a lot of work that goes into putting one of those out there and getting the show sold. And if it doesn't get picked up, I mean, is that?
Yeah. Oh, it's a very insightful question. In fact, I just talked through this with my youngest son yesterday because he was, a long story, but his career goals at this point in his life were dashed yesterday by something that happened, a phone call he got, and basically he's going to have to make a big pivot. And we talked about, how especially as Christians, how we handle devastating news that goes against everything that we personally wanted to happen. And it's definitely big emotion around when everybody bleeds, blood, sweat, and tears to create this, to sell it, first of all, convince a network to buy it or a streamer. And then to make it, first year is the hardest by far because you're basically finding the show and what it's going to be. And then out of the end of the pipe comes something you're pretty proud of, and it goes out there for the world, and the world says, nah, not interested, for whatever reason, it doesn't work. And it's devastating, but it's like a lot of other things in life, you build a callus after a while that you're like, okay. I tell our teams, like, feel really bad for one day, have a pity party, punch the wall, whatever you do, pray. And then the next day we go back to work, so.
You went from punch the wall to pray there, which
I know. Yeah, maybe both, different things work for different people.
Yeah. Marc, you love the Lord, and I just appreciate you've pulled together, a group of guys here locally that you and I are involved with. We get together to, talk about some of these kinds of things, like what do you do with failure? What do you do with success? We had a conversation recently about making Christian content versus secular content.
Yeah.
And I found that really curious. Like I tend to take this position again and again because I don't know if I really believe it, but I think I do. I think I'm forming this opinion that there's not a secular sacred divide. Everything we do it through as a Christian first. And I really appreciate how I think you've wrestled with that question as well. And so a lot of people that are listening to this are probably, producing like Christian content to reach people with the gospel, but it doesn't always have to be on the nose. Like there's redemptive stories, and there's ways that like biblical elements can come out of really any story. Have you seen that to be true?
Yeah, definitely. This is a really engaging topic to me because I've wrestled with it a lot over the years, and land at a pretty good place for a while, and then I start getting restless about it again. But in short, we don't suggest in any way that ours is a Christian company. It's definitely a pluralistic company with lots of people that are believers and a lot of people that aren't, and people that believe in other things and people that I don't know what they believe. And certainly when we put together freelance staffs to build a show, we hire, in addition to the people that work for our company, we hire freelance, whether producer, director, camera operator, or whatever. And we don't, their spiritual orientation is not part of the interview process at all, right? It's just, are they capable of doing the job? So some years ago, to your comment, I started kind of feeling this nudge, like, wow, if I'm really a faithful Jesus follower, should I be doing on the nose Christian stuff? Should I be pursuing Christian entertainment as part of what One Strings does? And explored that a bit. And then I feel like the whisper that I got back from the Lord was, you don't have to do that, but you got to be faithful to what's, true and beautiful in leading these people, and hopefully exhibit Jesus as, much as I'm capable of, through how I lead the company and how we love on people. And it's kind of then that became, I like to think, baked into our DNA as a company, is that whether it's the people that work for us, the people that we encounter that are talent, and even our buyers of our shows, is like treating them with respect and dignity and ultimately love, in all the ways that can be done, such that we hope that this thing called Warm Springs, if we don't make Christian content, it still blesses a lot of the people associated with it. And of course, we screw it up all the time, but that's the goal. More recently, we've had an opportunity to get into considering and ultimately finally engage one project that is more on the nose Christian. And that's exciting to me. So I feel like maybe God is leading us into that a bit. But for the most part, I've been comfortable over the last 10 years with, hey, this is my ministry, even if we're not creating Christian content. And that happens to prosper me and my family too, but I think that's okay. That's where I've settled. Maybe it's, maybe I'm right. Maybe some of it's justification in my own mind. I definitely go through that, but that's where I settle.
I think that a lot of the ministries that we've worked with tend to almost shy away from getting too far afield. Like, let's just keep it about the mission and not branch out from there, when they might be missing an opportunity to tap into something of interest, or an element of a story that resonates with somebody who's not a believer. So, like, if the mission is to engage people that are far from Jesus, then you kind of have to go farther away. You got to go out there and get them.
Right.
I think there's a human story that exists in a lot of the programs that you guys put out. I mean, it's about, at the end of the day, I think it's about people, from what I've seen anyway. You might have a different take on it.
Yeah.
But why do you think some of these programs resonate with people so deeply, especially like the longer running ones? What is it that's there that I can, relate to, or keeps bringing me back?
Yeah. Yeah, totally agree with you. The first part of your statement, by the way, that how do I say this succinctly? But yeah, just for us at least, and for me, opening myself up to all kinds of people from all kinds of backgrounds, wherever they're at in their spiritual journey or not, and engaging them in a loving way has borne a lot of fruit, for me. And I like to think for a lot of them. The second part of it, I think it depends on the type of show. So we take a show, we keep coming back to Mountain Men. I think Mountain Men is ultimately kind of aspirational. I always describe the suburban dad, I don't know why I always say Cleveland, but he comes home from his job in suburban Cleveland, and, maybe he doesn't love his job. Maybe he doesn't necessarily love exactly where he lives. And he gets home and his wife's tired and the kids are crying, all the classic stuff. And after dinner, he can sit down in his easy chair and he watches these guys who are living off the land. They're living the rugged lifestyle. They're outdoors. They're cutting their own firewood. They're hunting for their meat. And they're, fishing. And he's like, man, I wonder if I'd be happier living like that. Am I missing something? So I think it's a little voyeuristic, a little aspirational, a show like Mountain Men. Then, we have other shows where it's educational. Some of the things we've done with Mike Rowe, Kelsey Grammer, even the Kevin Costner History of Yellowstone Park thing. It's just really profound, really compelling history storytelling that a lot of people enjoy. So you're learning and being entertained by, pretty pictures and all of that. And you've got competition shows that, are obviously entertaining on a different level. So yeah, it kind of depends. But to your point, in the end, it certainly comes down to, in the end, the person that's on the screen, whether they're in a cooking competition, whether they're telling a story of history, whether they're living a life a certain way. It comes down to compelling characters on the screen. No shows that have been successful in the unscripted space, for sure, in history, have not had compelling characters. Now, unfortunately, in our society, some of those are the kind of reality shows that, give reality a bad name, the Real Housewives and the, things that there's a lot of, kind of the lowest expression of human interaction. And people look at that, and I don't know exactly why they're entertained by that, but I think part of it might be they're like, well, I'm going to be perfect, but I'm not as messed up as that dude. I don't know. But yeah, it's all about the people and the personalities, the characters in the end.
I think I've tended to, in the work I've done, like in the ministry space, I tend to elevate the message over the character. And I think that's kind of a natural, just probably a reflection on the people that we're working with. Like, oh, it's not about me, and it's, but at the same time, I've always said from a marketing standpoint, it's really hard to engage with a brand. And I always use Nike because everybody knows it. Like I can't really connect with Nike. I can connect with a lot of people that like Air Jordans or like, Nike soccer kit or whatever the thing is, it's that community around it. So the compelling character, I think, is something that I think a lot of ministries need to explore when it comes to their video content,
Oh man, I couldn't agree more. And part of the reason I jump on that so quickly is that I'm newly elected to the board of directors of a wildlife conservation based nonprofit. And they, of course, right away want to subcommittee me into something to do with video because of my background, which I'm happy to do. And one of the conversations we've had, is like, what do we want to accomplish? And then let's reverse engineer from there. And I suspect that in the end, they think they want a TV show or they want a documentary that touts the good work of this organization. But I'm going to attempt to convince them what they really want is a really robust social media strategy with video. Because right now, their video content is focused totally on message. Mm-hmm. And there's no character at all. It's pretty pictures. It's facts and figures. Even if there's a beautiful wild animal in the foreground, I won't get into all the details, but and then it references the good work of this organization. When somebody's scrolling through Instagram at Mach 4, that just doesn't stand out enough,
Yeah.
Whereas what I think they need is a compelling character. I hadn't even thought about this, so we just start talking about it, and like maybe hops this with your question, but people will connect to a character in some kind of a arc, some kind of a story, something that needs to be unpacked, coming from a character that they connect to for some reason. Either they really respect them, they're really famous, they're crazy. I mean, it could be anything, right? It could be somebody who's just larger than life on screen, or somebody that's super stoic but really smart on the subject matter. It could be a million different things. But a mouthpiece for that message that gets engagement is I think what it's all about.
Yeah. People relate to people. Mm-hmm. There's a fishing guide out of Twin Bridges that I follow on Instagram, and I saw him at the boat ramp. We were fishing the Big Hole last year, and he had been really vocal about a number of things. I mean, Captains for Clean Water, water issues in Florida, but then also some of the local trout population. I just pulled up in the truck and rolled down the window. I was like, hey, I just wanted to say thanks. Like, I really appreciate kind of you using your voice, for causes. Yeah. He's like, oh man, I really appreciate that, and he had something to say about, how social media tends to devolve into just arguments, but he was taking it upon himself to kind of be that compelling character, really. I think that's a great lesson for nonprofits in every space.
Oh, yeah, I love that, because it's like popular TV shows. We feel like we kind of know those characters, that, Michael Scott on The Office is someone we know, right? And we invited him into our house when we were watching those shows. And in the same way, a compelling character, whatever the platform, but in this case, social media, can be that person that we feel so connected to after a while that we see him out and roll our window down and tell him thanks, And you wouldn't do that if instead of him, the message was coming with just pretty pictures of those rivers and trout and all the rest. It wouldn't be the same, Yeah.
So let's click into this a little bit more. What are some ideas that you've had? I mean, you have more video production experience than anybody I know. How do you scale that for social media, especially in a nonprofit context where time, resource, things like that tend to be more limited?
Yeah. I'm frankly, I'm not an expert here, because our focus has been traditional video entertainment platforms, right? Like, of those 50-some shows we've created, 40-some have been on cable and on what we'd call linear television. Now, of course, they're all moving to streaming. Even ones that used to be on linear are moving to streaming platforms, and new ones we're selling are on streaming platforms.
Are streaming and linear different? Like, those are...
Yeah, linear by definition in our, and there's so many different acronyms and references, but linear would be basically cable or satellite. So DirecTV, Dish TV, all the cable providers, where you pay monthly and it comes in and it's loaded with ads and it's delivered in a very linear way. Streaming, of course, went all over the top of that with, accessing through the internet and then paying a subscription. Now it's kind of all jumbled up. There's all kinds of hybrid platforms, and now you've got streaming that has commercials, and it's very chaotic right now, which is challenging and also kind of exciting for those of us in the industry to watch this thing sort and find the opportunities. But my point I was really getting at is that we don't have a lot of experience doing short form video because there's never enough money in it. Making something for YouTube or something for social media doesn't have nearly the cachet and the budget implications of something for Netflix, right?
Sure.
But I think there are some principles there. And again, I'm starting to apply them in other areas of my life, in that, things we know, younger demographic isn't going to watch cable, and they're not even watching as much long form entertainment as the generation before them at all. Full stop. Millennials and Gen Z are watching YouTube and they're watching streaming, and actually a lot more YouTube than anything. And then social is 60% now of content consumed on social media is video. So it's crossed over. Whereas, a place like Instagram was all stills, now 60% video, and it's growing every year in single digits, high single digits from what I read. And what that younger generation is looking for is authenticity over production value. So whereas if we make a show for Netflix, we're working on one now, the production value has to be off the chart. Because when you click on Netflix and whether it's scripted or unscripted show, you expect it to be excellent quality. But there are shows that are equally or equal to or greater than in popularity on YouTube that are shot on somebody's iPhone, And it's not to say you can't make something beautiful on an iPhone, because you can. I mean, there's more horsepower for quality in an iPhone now than there was in cameras 10 years ago. We were paying 50 grand for. So yeah, young people are looking for authenticity. So that character, it's still character first in my mind, is always going to get the most eyeballs. And then it needs to be authentic. And it still needs to be shot and edited in a quality way. I mean, it can't be schlocky because no one wants that. But yeah, there isn't the emphasis on premium production values for a lot of these things that there used to be.
Yeah, I think that's really an advantage that maybe a lot of nonprofits have, is that authenticity. Like if you were to rank values, I mean, I'm sure that's at the top of most of these organizations' lists, just want to communicate in an authentic way. And so you combine that with a character or, somebody that is relatable. That's a powerful combination.
Yeah. And authenticity is a real asset to the younger demographic. We just had this conversation last night at the council meeting of our local church, in that the youngest demographic in the church, through some surveying and some kind of anecdotal evidence we have, are the ones that are most craving authenticity, because they live on their phone in this world of very, very shallow stuff,
Yeah.
So if they're going to press in deeply, they want assurance that it's authentic, that the messenger, the organization, whatever it is, has a high level of authenticity. That said, go back to social media, still has to be presented in a way that stands out with that character, or with some kind of format that, I don't know. I just see too many organizations that put their nice little message up on social media and it's just not impactful.
Right.
Yeah.
It's hard. Yeah. It's hard to engage with.
Yeah. And they have even good sized organizations, they have a marketing person or a brand person, and they're like, oh yeah, we need a social media presence. So let's get somebody to throw something on Instagram once a week with a little, quippy message about, our mission or our organization. That's not going to cut it. It's not going to cut it. I mean, it's fulfilling an obligation, but in terms of expanding the scope of the organization, recruiting new interests, really compelling people to do something, got to find somebody that has, again, a personality or some level of creativity that stands out.
Mm-hmm.
Now that jumps off the screen as you're scrolling. Easier said than done, by the way.
Yeah, for sure. I sent you a text a couple weeks ago about that book, Anxious Generation.
Yeah.
I'm putting you on the spot here. I don't expect you to have read it by now, but did you look into that at all?
Yeah, it's on my list, but I haven't read it yet. I'm a really active reader, so I always have a queue going, so I'm only a couple books away from it, but I will read it because I found the title and the subject matter really interesting.
Well, I mean, you're talking about a younger generation, and it's an audience that, everybody's interested in talking about. I think there's a real kind of online to offline opportunity that centers around authenticity and really authentic relationships, which I think is a huge opportunity for people that are trying to engage a new. To say it's an audience is just kind of so, not to me.
Yeah.
Like, this is the mark, but
community. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned the local church, and I know you're active, very involved there. How does there's two things that I've seen over the last few years, especially in the U.S. Like some of these video production teams at local churches are incredible. I mean, what they turn out on a 7-day cycle, every week you just come in, and usually it's like one or two guys, men or women, but it's a small team and they've just gotten so good at being fast. At the same time, I see, where social media is just craving video, like it seems to be like an under-resourced opportunity. from the local church. I mean, we've
Yep.
kind of already covered this a little bit, but I mean, any thoughts specifically about, maybe church community there? Because it's a totally different environment. Like the community already exists, and you want to invite people into it.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge opportunity for churches.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I hadn't given that much thought. As you know, I just went back on the council of our church, Journey Church in Bozeman. And it's kind of the church you described, where the head of our video production, who's been there a long time, an amazing guy, and he just kills it in terms of what they put on the screen every week. I mean, the videos that announce certain activities around there, and then the video that tees up the message, they're fantastic. But we're completely lacking in video on social media. Yeah, it's more of the situation I described, which was, an organization. It's like, check the box. Yeah, we need an Instagram. We need a social media presence, but then the content, I don't think anybody there would take offense to this, but the content is lackluster. Yeah. So, hey, you've given me a challenge for the for the year. I think there's a lot more that could be done there, because, again, the younger people, especially, which Journey is a very young church, they're not going to stop on scrolling for just the basic content that's got a little scripture on it or something. Video would be much more likely to create an impact with them.
Well, I'd be happy to wade into that with you and see what kind of trouble we can start. But
that'd be fun. Let's do it.
Just before I let you go, I think that a lot of the teams that MII works with, I think can gain a lot from the conversation that we've had today. I mean, if there was one thing that you would, from your experience and perspective, share with pastors or ministry leaders, nonprofit leaders who might be listening, to kind of level up your video content that you're releasing on social media. I mean, we've covered cameras, we've covered character, we've talked about, kind of the timing, like you mentioned, one video a week. Like, I don't think that's enough. What's one thing from your perspective that you might encourage people to think about, especially those in a leadership position that have an opportunity to kind of push their team in a certain direction?
Yeah. Boy, I think my answer will sound like a kind of a cop-out, but it's just making it a priority. And then I think once it's a priority, then it can lead to other things which are foundational to that. Things like having a strategy. So once it's a priority, then what is our strategy? And then what's our tactical plan that supports that strategy? So, here's what we hope to accomplish. It's, kind of getting things done 101. What do we hope to accomplish? And then what's our plan to do that? And that might mean things like find that dynamic young person in the church family or in the community that you can budget some dollars for and make this a priority, to where a year from now, whatever it is, you've got a really dynamic social media based video campaign that's, again, it's very intentional. This is what we're hoping to accomplish. This is how we're going to get there, and then create the content to make that happen.
I'm going to piggyback on that, because, I mean, you I'll just put it directly to you. Do you start by tapping into what people want, or do you start with an idea and see if it resonates with people? And I mean, in your work, like, because you guys are trying to come up with new programs to sell and film all the time. So, like,
right.
Or is it a combo of the two? Like, how do you approach that?
Yeah. So in our business, which is, at least a little different than what we're talking about in terms of developing a social media campaign, for sure, but it's a combination of market trends, our our food shows, the popularity of food shows and cooking shows. Is it going up? Is it going down? Like right now, the biggest trend in unscripted entertainment by far is one we don't participate in, but it's true crime. Like true crime is killing it right now, for better or for worse. People love that stuff, and nothing wrong with it. It's just not our deal. So we watch the trends, then we have relationships with the buyers. So whether they're at a streaming service or whether they're at a cable network or wherever, we're constantly in contact with them to say, hey, what are you looking for? Oh, we actually want to build out our survival show block on Thursday nights. Okay, we're going to spin up some ideas, come back to you. And we have really good relationships with some buyers and others not so much, because whatever turnover, or we just never quite connected. But we're always looking to build those relationships too, that's kind of what I spend most of my time doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third bucket is just, our sort of third level of activity, maybe better said, is just keeping our antennas up for interesting stuff that we might see something in the news, or somebody might send us an inkling of an idea. And we do have a big team of developers who are constantly grinding out ideas, and they go across the radar screen, and then we're like, oh, that one, that's cool. We like that. We think maybe Discovery would buy that, or Amazon would buy that. With the social, just to riff on that a little bit more, it occurred to me that, again, starting with intention about what it is a church wants to accomplish, and then thinking about how this video campaign could support that, seems like the way to go. And I think about an example at our own church, which is not on social media, but we just started offering more frequent baptisms, right? And you've been there on those Sundays, baptism Sundays. And then this great video producer that I mentioned as part of Journey started to do interviews, well shot, well lit interviews with the people that were going to be baptized, and asking them if they'd be willing to share a bit of their story. Where are they at in their walk with Jesus, and why did they feel like it was important to be baptized? We throw those up on the screen, and guess what? The baptisms are out the roof. Like, we can't hardly get them all done on a baptism Sunday now. People are coming in waves, because they're seeing the value through video and through those video testimonies of people that have chosen to get baptized, and they're saying, I want that. I want a piece of that, So that's I think a pretty good example in our even local church Christian world of how video can be so compelling. If we had not done that, or even if we'd just had a few of them come up and speak or something, it wouldn't have been nearly as impactful, in my opinion.
I think you're right. Yeah, and then the team's doing a great job over there. So keep it up, Marc. Thanks for spending some time. I think your perspective is so valuable and interesting. I know your time's very valuable too. You've been successful at a lot of things that you've put your hand to, and I think you would probably credit the Lord for a lot of that. But He's gifted you with this ability to just think through, kind of strategically and systematically, like, what do we prioritize? How do you resource that? What's the strategy? What do you go after? I think the people listening to this episode can just have a lot of takeaways. I really appreciate you sharing today.
Well,
thanks for the time.
So happy to do it, man. I love talking about this stuff. So I hope it blesses someone, and let's do it again sometime.
All right. Sounds good.